Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pastoral Thoughts Podcast. This is a special edition, special episode with a children's ministry pastor that we had in from Texas. It's Kerby Richmon, and he's been working for 3 decades in children's ministry. He did a children's training seminar at our church, Lighthouse Bible Baptist Church. We had other churches in. It was extreme blessing. So if you work in children's ministry, this is going to be a blessing and an asset to you. Or if you oversee children's ministry, or you just want some tools actually to teach adults, it'll be a blessing to you as well. And so enjoy. There's going to be 3 different sessions with Brother Kerby, and God bless you. Thanks for tuning in.
Then let's go on to E. We're getting 2 letters into the first word, okay? Expression. To capture a student's heart, a teacher must have heart and expression. How can a teacher express love? Your first blank there, blank number 9, is eyes. How many of we had mamas and daddies that could show love with their eyes? Maybe sometimes show correction with their eyes when we needed, okay? We call dads the hairy eyeball, okay? You didn't want to get the hairy eyeball, right? But my mama could look at you in the face, and there wasn't a doubt in your mind that she loved you. And I realize there's a different kind of love that we show in the classroom, but there's not a child in your class that needs another critic in their life. But there's a bunch of them that need somebody else to show them love and to show them assurance and to show them acceptance. That'd be a wonderful thing, okay? So make eye contact while you're teaching and when speaking to them one-on-one. Sometimes it's a matter of stopping when you're talking to somebody to make that eye contact. We're busy. And, I mean, there's a team of people around here. Elizabeth's been back there. She's been there putting tablecloths on. John and his wife, they're still running around doing something. We all can get really busy, can't we? Whenever I moved to Dallas 10 years ago, the pastor and I had been friends for about 6 years, so I knew some things that I needed to get done. And so Sunday morning, I mean, I was busy through the week, but Sunday morning I was trying to be all over the property and getting in different buildings and checking on things. And after about 6 months, one day we were in staff meeting, he said, he started off with some very kind words. He said, Kerby, I love what you're doing. He said, you're really being a blessing. But he said, Can I help you with something? I said, sure. He said, sometimes you need to slow down every once in a while. I said, okay. I said, my daddy never told me that. But he said, seriously, he said, sometimes he said, you're building relationships. But he said, the people, whenever they're in the service, he said, sometimes people make comments to me that, hey, I'd love to talk to Kerby about this, but I know he's really busy, doesn't have time to talk to me. And then he said, I've observed you. And he said, Sunday morning, you're trying to get to all these different places. And he said, meanwhile, you're walking right by people that really would like to talk to you and build a relationship with you. So he said, just force yourself to stop and have that conversation with Dan. And he said, then when you get around the corner, he said, you run if you need to get to the other spot, but don't make Dan feel like he's holding you back. So make sure your kids understand this same thing. You understand the application in your classroom? Don't have your kids saying, well, you know, I'd love to talk to Miss Monica, but I know she's really busy. She's got to get to choir right after class. I just want to have a chance to talk to her. I'd really like to talk to her. I'd really like her to pray with me, but I know she's busy. And sometimes if we're not careful, we can use that terminology. You know, we finished Sunday school and we said, hey kids, man, I'm so glad to have you here. I've got to run to, but I'll see you next week. And what are we saying to them? Because they're trying to be respectful. Well, she's busy, so I guess maybe I'll try to catch her next week. Does that make sense? Okay? So let's be careful of that to make sure we're stopping and looking people in the eye and having that conversation. Next page up at the top, have ears. Have ears to hear. Be ready to listen. Always listen first. Sometimes we jump to conclusions way too soon. Make sure we listen to both sides of the story, whether it's about 2 kids having a struggle or whether we're talking with a child and a parent that's having a struggle, whatever it may be. Hear what they say and what they don't say. Listen to their conversations with others. I'm not talking about eavesdropping on them. I'm just talking about as you spend time with them, be involved. Don't just say, hey, we're going to have an activity, and then the 3 workers are over here talking. They're up here, they're over here by the coffee pot, and there's 20 kids out here playing. You're going to learn a lot more about them when you're in with them. How does a shepherd get to know their sheep? They spend time with them. And the sheep know them. I grew up, my dad raised cattle. My dad hated sheep. But Mom and Dad both died in 2006. When they did, my sister and her husband moved in to Mom and Dad's house, and my brother-in-law now raises sheep there. Dad's rolling in his grave every time he hears one of those sheep. But cattlemen hate sheep. You see this on Westerns because it's just been gone on forever. But it's been interesting to me to watch Karen and Greg take care of their sheep, because that's the closest I've ever seen to a live demonstration of how a shepherd cares for their sheep and how much those shepherds love them, or the sheep love them, because that's who feeds them. Every single night, they pin them up. Now, they don't have to round them up. I mean, they simply go out there on the 4-wheeler, and they know that if they go in the pen, that they're going to pour out some feed for them, and they get a little bit of feed for going in there. But they go in this pen to protect them from the wolves, because they're the shepherds, and their whole responsibility is to protect the sheep. If I go out there with them, they're not too excited about coming in, because I'm a strange guy. They don't know me. I'm not their shepherd. They very seldom ever go on vacation, because when he'll ask somebody, he'll maybe have somebody else in the family to come over there and pin them at night and let them out in the morning or whatever. But it scares the sheep, and they don't like that. They don't like their sheep to be scared. What a concept. For us to realize we want our sheep to feel comfortable. But those sheep, man, they listen for them, okay? I can go out there and I can try to call them, hey, sheep. They don't move. They take off running. What's this weirdo doing out here, okay? But they go out there and the sheep start coming to them. They're listening. It just takes effort to do what we're talking about. Teaching is not easy. It takes energy to plan, prepare, and to study. But again, be a second-mile teacher. When you treasure your kids, that's not going to be a problem. Number 4, encourage. Encourage means to give support, to help, or to lift up. Remind each student that she was created by God, and He makes no mistakes. Remind them of verses like Psalm 139:14. Let's read this together, class. I will praise Thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are Thy works. Man, what a wonderful thing to know that and to remind these kids of that. In a generation that President Trump may just say there's 2 genders, but we have a lot of people who think there's more than 2 genders. We have kids in our church that ride the buses that struggle with this. They have parents that struggle with this. Or whether the parents not even struggle, they've just given into it and they can't figure out what they are, okay? But to help these kids understand this and deal with these situations, understand that we are all different, but just understand there's nothing wrong with being a little bit different. Show unconditional love, and to do that for everybody. This is what we need to be careful about doing. If we're not careful, we'll spend so much time taking care of little Aaron over here. Aaron's not a bad kid. He just has a lot of energy. And if I don't know you, Aaron, okay, but here's a candy bar, okay, all right, I'll buy your love back, okay, but he can't stay still for anything, okay, and if you shut your mouth for 5 seconds, his hand's going to go up in a heartbeat. He's got a question to ask. It may have nothing to do with what you're talking about, but he's going to ask a question. If you're not careful, all of your focus, you have 5 kids in your class, and all of your attention is going to Aaron. And here's Kathleen. She's the sweetest little girl, and she's there every week. She memorizes every verse. She's never caused you a problem in all her life, but she never gets any attention. That's not fair to her, okay? I will never forget, and our daughter, who's 33 now, will never forget the day when we lived in Ohio. We'd been in Texas. We'd gone back, and her Sunday school class, she had a teacher named Mrs. Woody. And Hannah missed an activity with Mrs. Woody. She was heartbroken. Mrs. Woody, now Hannah's 33 years old. Hannah still gets Christmas cards and birthday cards from Mrs. Woody. But we will never forget driving up to our house in Ohio after her missing this activity, and we drive up in our driveway, and her whole front door is decorated welcoming us home. See, she was faithful to praise her good kids too. We need to do that. So let's look at this. Ask the Lord to teach you new ways to encourage your students. Think of other ways, just like what I just gave you an example of what Mrs. Woody did. So then let's go on. To capture the student's heart, a teacher must have heart, show expression, and have the right attitude. Oh, man, isn't that important? Attitude. Now, many times we think attitude, she got an attitude, okay? And we've had some of those people. Maybe you've experienced that even this week. But see the child as God does. Jesus says, suffer the little children, allow them to come to me and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of God. Number 2, seek to help the student with problems he is facing. And then don't give up on him. I want to tell you, I can't give up on kids because of a promise that I made to God in 1989. In 1989, I was getting ready to get out of the Air Force. I was going to be leaving to go to college, Bible college. But I was teaching a junior high boys Sunday school class. Junior high boys that expression, just enough said, right? Junior high boys, all right? My daughter is an assistant principal at a middle school, a public middle school. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have about 800 kids in their school. That school is as much a ministry to her as this church is a ministry to you, Pastor. She loves those kids. She doesn't refer to them as her kids. She refers to them as babies. And she's protective of her babies. I don't know why I just said that, but that seemed relevant at the time. But where was I going with that? Oh, I was talking about, okay, so junior high. So here we are. I'm teaching this junior high class, first class I'd ever really taught on a regular basis. And there's a boy in my class named David Jordan. Someday we'll figure out what I'm going to do for David. I'll explain why I can't do it right now. But David Jordan had a huge impact on my ministry. Because David was Aaron. David was a distraction every week. He would come in, he would sit in the back of the class, he would lean his chair, he would tilt the chair, so he just had 2 legs on the floor. He'd tilt it back against the floor about once a month. He'd fall on his head, and he fell too many times, I think. But it was just always a distraction. I took him camping one time. Me and one of the other guys, we took him camping overnight, and that was a mess with him. I mean, I'm not talking about going to camp. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and I thought, Lord, just keep him alive until tomorrow morning so I can get him home. But David was reached through our bus ministry, and then his parents got saved, so the whole family was coming. But David understood how a Christian home should be, but his parents just weren't there. They were good people. They were growing in the Lord. But he knew there's some things going on in our house that should not be going on in our house. And that was very confusing to him. It's what made him so angry. Because mom and dad were disciplining him for things that he was doing wrong, but he knew that they weren't doing right either. But then they would come to church and be, the perfect people. He knew all that was going on in his mind and in his heart. One Wednesday night, I got to church, and at that time, my responsibility on Wednesday night is I ran the soundboard in the back. So as the pastor came out that Wednesday night, just looking at him, I thought, something is wrong with him. Something's bothering him. So the service started with a song, and then he was to get up to welcome everybody, and when he walked up to the pulpit, he said, we need to pray tonight for the Jordan family. He said the day David was walking home from school, he lived in Shreveport, and they lived close to the Red River. He says David was walking home today with some friends. They went down close to the river bank. He's not supposed to go down there. But he and some boys got to playing around down there and got to throwing rocks and got to wrestling around, and David tripped and fell, and they can't find him. We were pretty sure what had happened at that point. So I sat there through that service. I have no clue what happened after that in that service, because all I could think about David in my class. I was thinking about the times that I would get really aggravated with him. Just, Lord, let him come back to class again. Let him find him somewhere. And by the end of the service, somebody got to church, said found him. And so after the invitation, the pastor announced what happened. There we had choir practice after church. Nobody lets me in the choir. It just doesn't work, okay? One day in heaven, they'll enjoy hearing me sing, but nobody enjoys it now except the deaf section, okay? But so again, it was my responsibility to be at the soundboard. And so I'm going to run the sound for choir practice. And the very first song, so I don't remember what the pastor said the rest of the message. I remember coming back to announce that at the end that he had found his body. And then the choir got up to sing, and the very first song they were going to practice was "It Is Well With My Soul." How does that song start? When peace like a river. When they said that, I left that soundboard and I ran. I ran down the hall and I ran to our classroom and I knelt at David's chair. Asked God to never let me give up on a kid again, because that's what I'd done with David. I believe David will be in heaven. I look forward to seeing him there. But his ministry goes on because of what happened with the two of us and a promise that I made to God. Let me never see somebody else as I saw David. You ever think about, you ever dream for your kids in your classroom? I know that Dina needed a dream for me. My last Sunday in that church in Las Vegas, the pastor allowed me to preach. I was so scared to death. My knees were knocking so bad, they're still recovering, okay? It was a terrible message. I picked some message out of the sword of the Lord. I did my best to... It was awful. I mean, the message wasn't bad. I'm sure the way the pastor preached it, but I know but that church was so encouraging to me. I remember the pastor coming and putting his arm around me at the end. And he asked people to come up and gather around me, and they prayed for me. And they said, we need to pray for Kerby. He's now going out to be a missionary to the Air Force in Shreveport, Louisiana. I never thought about this before. He had a vision for me. The Brogans had a vision for my ministry. Do you think about that? You think about your kids? How is God going to use them one day? And not just, maybe they'd be a pastor. Aaron might be the next pastor of this church. We don't know that. But he also might just continue to be a very faithful member who, like some of these other people, coming in and getting set up for a day like this and teaching a class every week, and he has a career doing something else, and he's raising a family. But serving God is important to him because you invested in him. And you had a vision, you had a dream for him. And you had a dream for, I went to the wrong one, I don't know, Braylon? All right, I'm glad I know how to spell it, okay? But think about somebody, did you grow up in church? A little bit. Okay. Well, for now, can you just pretend you did, okay? So, but you had somebody, is there somebody in your life that you look back at as a child and think, I can see how that person, maybe you hadn't thought about it before, but maybe a teacher in school or somebody you'd look to? A grandparent? Yeah, okay. How many of you thinking of somebody like that right now? Yeah. Somebody that loved you enough, not just to teach you, but to invest in you. That's having the right attitude. Letter B, having an attitude of prayer, praying for each student by name. Now, sometimes you may think that might be hard to do. I want to, in your notes, after this section of notes, there's 2 pages that look like this, says getting to know my class. And I put this together years ago to help our teachers try to do what I'm encouraging you to do. And so if you could take this, and you have 10 kids in your class, so you go back and use the copier machine, you make 10 copies front and back, and you put a picture here, and you put the date that you did this. You have the grade of, you're teaching little Mary Ann, and she's in 3rd grade, and so you put 3rd grade on there. You put her name and her address. Maybe you're going to go visit them sometime, and now most people are just going to use Google or whatever, and you don't need to put directions on there. But the phone, her birth date. Wouldn't that be a great thing? Remember her birth date, and she gets a card on her birth date. Okay, and then you mark it on your calendar, just how Nita's, my birthday is marked on Nita's calendar, and Virginia's birthday is on there, and Hannah and Zach's birthday is on there. But that's important to you. You have the email address of their parents so that you can email them sometime and give them information about what's going on. And then you've talked to her before. You know whether she's a Christian or not. So as you pull this out, this is your prayer sheet for your class. And so as you pray for your class, say, okay, well, yeah, she's saved. I don't know about that guy that sits next to her. I'm not so sure about him, okay? So you put unsure about that, okay? You're not so sure about that guy. And But have they ever joined the church? Are they truly a member of our class? Has she been baptized yet? And you've talked, you know she hasn't been baptized, so you pray for her. Lord, help her to understand the importance of getting baptized. And so you pray about those. And this is a calendar that you're going to keep up of ways that you contact them. So I really challenge our teachers to make some kind of contact at least every quarter, a personal contact with them. And so whether it's so they can write that date on here, so in August, if they make 2 a month, that'd be great. But if they can, man, at least once a quarter, that'd be better than nothing, right? Than just showing up on Sunday morning. And so you put the date on there, you contacted them. And so right now we're in February, so today is February 22nd, right? So you put here February 22nd, the type of visit. I called her and I talked to her on the phone, or I went by to visit them at home, or this personal time, maybe that might be through an activity, or hey, we all met at McDonald's after church, or whatever it is, but that's where I spent time with them. And so that your goal to have at least 4 different marks on there from this year that they did that. And then over here on the back, you're put names of their family on here, because you're going to pray for her family. And so you're praying for her siblings and her mom and her dad. And so you see all these things on here, where she goes to school. And then down here, the personal. And so this is what, sometimes people say, well, I don't know what to talk to a 2nd grader about. What do I talk to a 5th grader about when I call them? What do I even talk about? Well, this gives you things you can talk about. You can find out, what their pastimes are, what their favorite sport is, their favorite food, or their candy. Does she like Butterfingers or Kit Kats? What is she going to fight over, okay? But so when it comes her birthday, then you know what to get her. And she goes, wow, how does she know that Kit Kat was my favorite chocolate bar? How did he even remember that? Because in a conversation months ago, you wrote it down because it was important to you. And just like these kind of things for your own children, to learn that for your kids, okay? And do they play any instruments? You see some other things on there, but these are all things that you can write down. But one of them here, any special prayer requests. And she writes those prayer requests down on there. So you remember how to pray for everybody in your class. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? I wonder if that would change our classes if we did that. I think that would probably make a big difference, wouldn't it? We're talking about making a difference. Okay? So let's go down to C. Have an attitude of expectancy. Expect children to behave. We're going to have some rules here. We're going to talk about, for one thing we want to do is we want to expect children to follow the golden rule. We're going to expect them to do unto others. Wouldn't that make a big difference? I mean, out of all those executive orders that Trump signed when he became president, what if he just said, hey, all right, we're going to make sure that everybody, we're going to follow the golden rule? Would that make a difference? How would that change our homes, our churches, our communities? But that's something that Jesus taught that we just kind of put aside. It'd take away a lot of the selfish decisions that we make, wouldn't it? When we remember, hey, I don't want to be treated that way. I don't want somebody to steal my stuff. I don't want somebody to take my Hershey bar, so I'm not going to take her Hershey bar, okay? But man, think of the application that would be through that, okay? So as we go through this, think through how you would apply that. So in the classroom, have some kind of rules, and they don't have to be complicated. You don't have to give them the 10 Commandments of Sunday school, okay? And so I think this makes it pretty simple. Hands in your lap. Sit up straight, no talking, and don't leave unless it's an emergency. Now, these 4 rules are very simple, okay? So I'll go through them just about every time I teach, and I'll explain to them. Now, I don't expect you to just keep your hands in your lap like this the whole time. but I do expect you to keep them to yourself, okay? All right? Don't reach over and pull somebody's ear. Don't reach over and pick somebody else's nose. We had a kid. I was preaching at a church in Fort Worth last year, and first time it's ever happened. I've gone through these for years and years and years. And this had never happened before. I'm going through it, and there's a little boy sitting on the front row about right over here. And as soon as I said that, as soon as I just made that joke, don't pick somebody else's nose, then his hand went up. And so I just keep going. And I watched some of the workers, and they're kind of giggling and looking at one another. They knew what was getting ready to happen. And so I could tell his hand was not going to come down. And so finally I stopped. And I'm like, did you have a question? Yes, sir. So what's your question? He said, you said the rules, keep our hands to ourselves in our lap. He said, you said not to pick somebody else's nose. He said, is it okay if I pick my own nose? He was serious as a heart attack. I said, if that's what you need to do, I guess go ahead. And he did. He wasn't lying. He liked to pick his nose. He spent a lot of time doing that. He was digging. Drill, baby, drill is what he said. So hands in your lap, set up straight. And again, I don't expect you to set up at a 90-degree angle, but say, I just don't want you to lay down in your neck bone, sitting in your chair, okay? So we want to set up straight. And then, we're not going to talk to one another. I'm going to give you a chance to talk. I'm going to give you a chance to talk and answer questions. But we allow one person to talk at a time unless we're singing as a group, okay? The only time we're going to do something other than that is I like to do something. We'll go ahead and introduce you. I'll introduce you to my friend. This is Wilbur, okay? And so sometimes when I'm asking questions, in fact, Wilbur stays with me a lot, and he's been to Brazil, and he's been to Germany, and he's been all kinds of places with me, and he's getting kind of worn out in here. He's got it looking kind of rough. But whenever I ask questions, sometimes you ask questions. Hey, I'm going to ask you a question. 5 kids' hands go up. You didn't ask the question yet. And I use a kid. I might say, I want you to kiss my foot. Okay? Oh no. Okay. All right. So this is what I do. Okay. So when I ask a question, you can't even raise your hand until Wilbur squeals, okay? All right? And so we have a little bit of fun with that. Or sometimes we'll use Wilbur and we'll have flying pigs. You heard when pigs fly, okay? And so we'll do this. So we're going to do this right now. Get you a little bit of exercise before we go to lunch, okay? So back up your chairs a little bit, okay? So get ready. This is Baptist aerobics, okay? So back up your chairs. You're going to need to back up. You're going to need some space, all right? So when Wilbur flies, you're going to stand up. When he and as you stand up, not only are you going to stand up, but you're going to scream as loud as you can scream, all right? And then when I catch him, it's quiet, all right? And so what we're going to do, and so you'll have contests like this to see who participates better, the boys or the girls. Because all the girls stood up, and some man's back there and say, I ain't going to stand up for nothing. I don't care what he says, okay? And so the girls are going to win the points. That's the way it's going to work, all right? Okay? All right, so let's try this. So again, when Wilbur goes up, you stand up. So we'll start off with everybody doing it, okay? So let's start with, here he goes, okay? We squeal, and then he's getting ready to fly. You ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Everybody up, and back down. All right, see, some of you didn't get up. You did it. You're the one. Some can't get back down, okay? All right, he's getting there, all right? All right, so all right, so this time it's just the ladies, all right? But remember, you got to scream. And it's not just, okay? I mean, you let it go, all right? And then we're going to look not only to how loud you are, but how it stops, okay? So if Jonathan's up here leading music, da-da-da-da-da, everybody shuts up, right? Okay? So when I catch Wilbur, you shut up, okay? You can't say it at home, okay? But it stops, okay? All right? It's like, okay? It all stops at one time, all right? So let's try it again. Ready? 1, 2, just the girls this time, all right? 1, 2, 3. Just have to follow the instructions, okay? See the girls, I told you, Pastor, you're so right. Adults don't listen, okay? All right? So wait till he flies, all right? 1, 2, 3, up and down, okay? It's not quite fast enough, okay? It just doesn't have the same effect. I got to have a taller ceiling to get this to work. All right, guys, let's see if we can do better, all right? The girls are kind of good. Let's see if the guys can get it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ready? See, hey, they're pretty sharp. They're watching close. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Woo! And back down again. See, that's pretty good, huh? Why do we do that? I don't remember why we were doing that. It all gets back to this idea of they're listening. They're not talking to one another. And so when you do that every once in a while, you give them a chance. Now, I was at a church one time, and the kids' church was in the basement underneath the big church. Ooh, the pastor was not happy with me after church was over with, okay? I disturbed their service, all right? But no, he said, I asked you to come here. I just didn't know you were going to do all that. So you want to make sure that it's appropriate times, okay? Be reverent about what you're doing, all right? So this last one, don't leave unless it's an emergency. You know, it's weird. We were when I was in the in Love Field in Dallas to come here yesterday. I've never been in an airport. The fire alarm went off. And so the automatic thing kept telling us we were supposed to go outside. Nobody's moving. I thought, is the building going to burn down? What is going on here? And it was a false alarm. But there was somebody from Southwest there. I went over and I said, are we supposed to be leaving? Or is this some kind of drill? They're not said it's a drill. She said, well, we've been having this problem. It keeps doing this. And so if we leave, if you go out the door, everybody's got to go back through security. So, you know, she said, it's going to take a while. Okay, I'll stay right here. Let's just tell me to go. And so, sure enough, they came over to the intercom a little bit and said it was a false alarm. I'm not just talking about fire alarm emergency, but we want to encourage your kids to stay in class. Pastors, if you want to encourage your workers to do this, you will train these kids so they won't be like a lot of the adults that you have in service right now that get up 3 times to go to the bathroom in one service, okay? Or just get out to, you know, they go out, and if you watch them, when they go to the water fountain, they go up, push the button, and then they come all the way again. Like, are you really that thirsty? You had to leave the service. You didn't drink a spoonful of water out there, and then you come back in here, and then they come back in, and they're sitting on the front row, and all the way down, you know, on the way out, they're waving everybody on the way out, and then they're coming back in. They're stopping, shaking hands, everybody on the way back in. Hey, I got my teaspoon of water, man. I'm feeling good now. I was in Ohio when I finally said, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop kids going to the bathroom in the middle of service. So I got workers together. I said, all right. I said, so this is what we're going to do. I said, it's just going to be a rule now. They cannot go to the bathroom. We did that a couple of weeks. And then one Sunday, all the kids left, but there's a wet chair about right here. Oh, boy. And I knew exactly who it was. Unfortunately, that little guy, his name was Austin. He's in heaven now. He was in the beginning stages of a bad illness that most people didn't know he had. And so I thought, oh, of all people, this is going to be horrible. And so as soon as I got home, I called his mom and I said, did Austin say anything about junior church today? She said, well, yeah. She said, thank you, Pastor Kerby. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, did he ask anybody? She said, I know y'all put that new rule in that kids can't leave. I said, but we give them time to go. She said, I know that. But she said, I've been telling you about what he has wrong, and this is going to be, you know, he's going to have problems with his bladder. And I asked him if he asked a worker if he could go to the bathroom, and he told me, no, Mama, Pastor Kerby said we can't go to the bathroom in the service. Well, he did. I felt terrible. So the next week we got back together with workers. I was like, okay, guys, we got to do something here because we need to keep them in here, but what else can we do? And a friend of mine had this idea, and it was like rocket science as far as I'm concerned. It takes care of this situation. Anybody can leave the service to go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, but when they come in, they have to sit on the very back row. And if you're on the very back row, you're never going to get picked to come up and play a game. You're not going to get picked by what we call a secret agent. You're not going to win any prizes if you're sitting on the back row. Now, what this does is that would allow Austin the opportunity to get him to go to the bathroom. But it's going to keep little Jack behind him from following him back there. Now, the boys don't do that like the girls do. Girls don't think they can go to the bathroom by themselves. Let's get 3 of them. Let's all go back here together, okay? Well, now you put this into place, and little Sally's got to go, and she'd reach over and say, hey, Betty, let's go to the bathroom. You can go if you want to. I'm going to stay right here. Because I want to play the game. I want to get those prizes. I don't want to go back there. I already went. You understand what I'm saying? But you've got to be consistent with that. But those simple things will take care of so many problems if you will take that and put it into place, okay? Lastly, expect God's blessings on your class. Page 3. Expect the unexpected things to happen. Things are going to happen. I've given you several examples today, okay? Number 4, follow the 3 F's. Be fair, be firm, and be friendly. Now, that's a way to show respect, okay? You don't have to be ugly to enforce a rule. Just be fair and be firm. Don't change it every day. By the way, none of you, there's not anybody in this room that wants a boss that's not fair, firm, and friendly. You don't want a boss that's one day it's okay if you come in 15 minutes late, and the next day, you're right on time, and he said, "Well, where were you? I looked for you." Or you come in a little bit late and bite your head off. Okay? So be firm, be fair, be friendly, be consistent about it. Okay? So let's go on then. R, to capture the student's heart, a teacher must have heart, show expression, have the right attitude, and the teacher will need to gain and show respect. And respect for the teacher must be earned, not just assumed. And again, that's the same way with you. It's the same way with your boss. Okay? There's a whole concept of leadership there. You've got a leadership that somebody gives you and leadership that you've earned. And this is that kind of respect. So share with your class how God is working in your own life. What are you learning? What are you reading? What if tomorrow you're supposed to be teaching about Noah, but before you start teaching about Noah, you say, hey guys, before we start talking about Noah, he said, I want you to know this week I've been reading in the book of James. And as I've been reading in the book of James, this is something that I was thinking about. I just want to take 2 minutes to share this thought with you. What are you teaching them? That you're doing what you're telling them to do? That you don't just study your Bible to teach them, but you're studying your Bible for God to speak to your heart as well. Okay? What are your prayer requests? Teach them to make decisions based upon the Bible. Some qualities they should respect about their teacher. Obviously that they're saved. Now this is good. Willfully, cheerfully, and faithfully serving God. Look at 1 Timothy 1:12. Look what this says. And I thank Christ Jesus our Lord, who has enabled me, for that he counted me faithful, putting me into the ministry. If you want your kids to be faithful, then let's be faithful. Let's make sure that we're there when we're expected to be there, and that they understand that. Obviously, that we're honest. Think about, I like to think about the story of Moses. And in the day that Moses started trying to show off to his father-in-law. Remember that story? And he starts showing Jethro all the stuff that he's doing. And he's beating his chest. I mean, you can just imagine Moses, okay? I don't know if Moses is going to look like this when we get to heaven, but we know what he looks like according to the Ten Commandments movie, right? But I can just imagine Moses just strutting around and saying, come on, Father, let me show you what I've been doing. And he shows Jethro all the stuff that he's doing in Exodus 18. And then remember what Jethro says to him? This thing that you're doing is not good. Whoa. He didn't expect to hear that, did he? Okay? But that's being honest. Submission to authority. Guys, there are times I've only been to out of all the churches in here, as far as I know, I've only been to this one. And I've not been here on a Sunday. So I don't know how long your services go. But it's going to happen sometimes when you're in junior church that a service is going to go longer than you expected it to. There's two ways that you can handle that. You can say, man, normally we'd be out of here at 12:15, but nobody's coming yet, so we're going to go on, and we're going to, whether you're out of things to do, that's why you should always have some. We're going to talk later about some things you can have on the side and be ready to pull out to fill that time in case it goes after 12:15. Like, I don't know what to do. I just planned up to 12:15. What are we going to do now? Okay, but you just run with it, and you're flexible, and you go with it. You don't know what's going on up here. There might be people getting saved, maybe people at the altar praying together. You don't know what's happening up here. That's one way you can handle it. Or you can do like I've heard teachers do before. Say, I wonder what's wrong with him. Why is he preaching so long today? I hate it when he goes on vacation. He comes back from vacation, he preaches for an hour. He tries to get it all back in. Is that the kind of attitude we want him to have? Is that really showing submission to authority? No, we need to be careful about that. Well organized and prepared for class. We've talked about that. Okay? Remember, you're training the next generation how to serve. The kids in your class may one day be teaching your grandkids or your great-grandkids. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Being a hard worker, being diligent, having attention to detail. Your testimony is so important for them to respect you. So if the students are treated with love and consistency on a daily basis, they will respect their teacher. It will happen. And sometimes teachers say, well, these kids just don't respect me. Well, what have you done to earn their respect? If a teacher comes to me, and many of them know, if they come to me twice about one child, I'm going to ask them a question that'll hit them right between the eyes. I don't say it to make them feel guilty. I just want them going along with this thought right here. I'll ask them, okay? So Mrs. is it Stasko? Okay, Mrs. Stasko teaches third grade girls, and Elizabeth is one of her third graders, and she keeps coming to me about Elizabeth, okay? You come to me a second time, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you been to visit Elizabeth? That'll change it. If you had these kind of conversations, whether you've been in a home or that coffee conversation or whatever, where you're really having a good conversation with her, you're probably going to figure out she's a distraction in class because she is starving for attention because of what's going on at home, or she's having a tough time in school. And so it's without fail. She may still do the same thing, but she's going to have a lot more understanding for it now because she's gotten to know her sheep a little bit better. She understands what's going on. Okay? So, respect for the student is essential to capturing the heart. Love and acceptance as individuals. Think about all the different people that Jesus loved. Here is a perfect man. God in the flesh. And yet still loved rich people, poor people, crippled people, deaf people, blind people. You name it, he loved them. Unconditional love. So we correct their misbehavior, but we don't wound them. We praise publicly. We rebuke privately. We teach them to respect themselves and each other. We talked about that earlier. So to capture the student's heart, a teacher must have heart, show expression, have the right attitude, gain and show respect, and earn their trust. That's a big one, okay? Time. What are they looking for? They're looking for consistency, confidentiality, and caring. And when I say confidentiality, I don't mean that they're confident you know how to teach, but they need to know. Pastor Jonathan, as you're the youth pastor, right? As a youth pastor, if a little girl, a 16-year-old girl finds out that she came to both of you and sat down and poured her heart out to you, and finds out that y'all had that conversation with somebody else in the youth department, you can guarantee one thing: she's never coming back to you. And probably those kids that you talked about her to are not going to either, because they're going to put two and two together and say, I'm not going to spill my guts. Now, this is what you can't do. Now, listen, this is very important. Every pastor in the room understands this. But sometimes teachers don't understand the importance of this. If a child comes to you as a teacher, I'd like to talk to you, but if I talk to you, will you promise me that you will not tell anybody? You say, I can't do that, baby. Because there may be something that you're going to talk to me about that I need to talk to your parents about. It's none of anybody else's business in this class what's going on. I promise I won't talk to anybody in the class, but based upon what you tell me, I may need to talk to your parents. Now, I promise you, if that's true, either you need to talk to them or I'll go with you to talk to them, but I can't promise you that. You understand what I mean? Because she may dump the whole truck on you and tell you about some abuse that's going on in the home. And I'm not sure all the laws in New York, but in Texas, we're mandatory reporters. And so if she starts reporting abuse to me, I am legally bound. Not just to, churches in the past have been notorious for trying to do an in-house investigation. That is illegal to do that, okay? You are required. When she tells you that, it's not your duty. You're not the FBI. You have the legal responsibility. You can go to jail for not doing that, okay? So make sure you know how to report those things. So that's why we never promise them that, okay? So understand that. So time, tenderness, C is touch. So let's talk about this, and we're ready to go get some soup in a minute. A hug is not inappropriate, but keep it public. Okay? Pastor, you mind helping me out just a second? I'm actually going to hug you if you'll come here, okay? So this is little Jack. He's 10 years old, okay? And so Jack comes in, and there are things that are appropriate and things that are not appropriate to do, okay? For me to go up, so I asked an attorney about this. In fact, y'all support Christian Law Association, okay? I asked David Gibbs about this one time. I said, so, because I'd been at one of their seminars, and they were saying, don't touch kids at all for any reason. And I literally left the seminar, and another guy with me would normally go bus visiting with me. And he said, what are we going to do when we see these kids? And sure enough, we drove. The first house we got to, we got out. 3 boys came running out. All of them came up and gave us a hug, and we're both like standing there like, I love you, but I ain't going to touch you. I ain't going to prison. So literally the next day after that, I called their office. And I said, explain this to me. And they said, basically, any extension of your arm and above, you're going to be fine to touch without ever getting to be a problem, okay? So I can come up, I can twist his ear, I can wring his nose, I can mess up his hair, okay? I can do any of this, okay? As long as I'm any extension of his hand. If I want to shake his hand, if I want to do a fist bump, okay? Again, if I want to throw him down, I mean, this is not unusual, and I'm not going to do it to you, okay? But I mean, it's not unusual for me to just throw a kid and body slam him on the ground. I mean, I won't nobody's ever had to go to the hospital from it or anything. But I'll mess with him as long as you're here and above, okay? So I can go up and give him a hug. I can give him a side hug, okay? I'm not going to go up and just wrap both arms around him and hug him like I'm hugging my wife. That's when you're going to get inappropriate. When you start going below this shoulder blade right here, lower back, okay? No coach's pats, okay, in Sunday school, all right? You know what I mean, okay? So we got to remember that. I'm trying to keep you out of prison, okay? And we can laugh, but let me tell you something, and especially for those in the room that have hair my color, okay? All right? Years ago, it was okay for you to sit a child in your lap and have a conversation with them. If they're out of the nursery, which for us that's 3 years and above, nobody goes in a lap. And that's hard for grandmas because you want to just love on those babies. And you can give them those hugs and you can spend that time with them. But I'm trying to keep you out of prison. And too many times this happens. I'll tell you what we tell our workers. We do trainings similar to this every year with our workers. And I tell them, and sometimes the pastor comes in and tells them. One time we had him scared to death because he came in right after I just talked to him about it. He didn't know that I was going to talk to him. But we have this conversation with them every year. When we talk about these kind of things that we just talked about, we explain to them, we are here to back you up. You are here to help us. We are a team. But if you break these rules and you hurt a child, you won't have to wait for the police to come after you. We're going to call them here. Yes, ma'am?
Is that hug thing the same for opposite genders?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just keep it a side hug, okay? All right? And you might with your friends, and I know ladies like to do that, but don't be doing that with girls, okay? And that's just our society we're in, okay? We just need to be careful about that, okay? So does that make sense? But, I mean, we let them know. We're not going to sweep something under the rug. We love you. You're our co-workers. We can't do ministry without you volunteers. But you're not going to hurt our baby sheep. You're not going to hurt our lambs. We're going to protect them. Okay? So make that very clear so that everybody understands. Like, well, I know they taught us that. No, you don't do that. Okay? So never use your hands. This is something a little bit different, but use your hands to discipline a child at church. And sometimes parents will say, well, you just, if he causes you a problem, you just take him in and whip his little behind. No, I'm not going to do that. Don't do that. Okay? That should never happen at church. I mean, if a parent wants to do that at church, that's fine. But that's not you as a volunteer. I promise you, you do not want to get into that. I can introduce you to 2 young men in Texas that are still in prison. They went to prison when they were 21 years old because the parents told 2 21-year-old boys, twin boys, that they could whip a boy. And not a good situation. Okay? So be careful about that. All right. On the rest of this, I promise you we're going to get to these other things down here. The other classes are much shorter than this, obviously. I promise you 2 o'clock we're going to walk out. Okay. Are we good with that? But I want you to see at the bottom of this page, I gave you some other resources, some books that you might find helpful to you. There's a website there that's called freebibleimages.org. On this website, if you will go there, some of you maybe you wish you had more visuals. Maybe you want to do something like this. And you need some other visuals other than what you have in your books. If you have a curriculum book, there are copyrights on there, okay? And you're not supposed to scan that stuff, and people do that a lot, okay? So what I would encourage you to do is this website. You see up at the top, freebibleimages.org. It's in your notes there. If you will click on this site, what will happen is you'll go there, and as it comes up, you can go in here, and let's say we want to find David. We're looking for some pictures about David. So we put in David. All these pictures are all about David. Now, different artists contribute to this. So you'll see some of them are a little bit more, hold on a second. It's not showing it up there, is it? Hold on. Woohoo! 3, 2, 1. There we go. Okay. Oops. Well, you can kind of see it. Duplicate. Hello. Help me out here. Try it again. There we go. David. All right. See, all of these are different sets of lessons. Some of them are very cartoonish, more preschool. Some are a little bit more like you might find in a Becca or some of these kind of things. So let's look over here. And so on that lesson, I click on that. So here, you see here, so there are 8 images in that lesson. So these are the different pictures in the lesson. And then underneath the pictures, if you click on them, they even have a little portion. Most of them have a little portion of the story underneath it. This is working off of my phone. It's not just supposed to do this. This is not your graphic, okay? There it is, okay? But see, underneath here, it'll say some things about what's going on in that story. But if we back up out of that, then you can go and download this whole set, and you can download it either as JPEGs, or you can just download it straight into PowerPoint even, okay? So it's a really neat tool to go and get other graphics about other stories that you may not have, your church may not have all that other stuff readily available, but using that you can get some things at absolutely no cost. And so this is a great thing, okay? All right? Okay, let's take a break. You want me to go and pray?
Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Pastoral Thoughts podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at pastorthoughtsmail@gmail.com. Also, if you want to check out more about our ministry here, you can visit pastorjack.org. I do have a blog that I do write. I'd love to have you as one of my subscribers there. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. God bless you.